welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy. I am a mum of 2 boys and really happen to love books. So if you would like to see more from me and join a little cozy corner of the internet, then please hit the subscribe button or like this video. It will be amazing to have you here. How are we in October? How? It is the 1st of October today, and this video is going to be my September wrap up. How are we in the first day of October? This is unbelievable, but it is spooky season, so I'm so excited. I do have a few more videos coming with my spooky and cozy recommendations, so again, hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified about when those come out. But yeah, this has been my best reading month. One of my best reading months. I read 6 books. Considering I was in a massive reading slump in August, I feel like I've bounced back now, and I hope I keep that streak going for the rest of the year, because this was a fantastic reading month and just a fantastic month overall. My eldest son turned 4. He is 4 years old. It seems like yesterday. He was just this little 6'13" skinny little baby, and now he is 4 years old, and next year he will be in school, which is just mind-boggling to me. And my best friend got engaged. 2 of my closest friends, they got engaged. They're such amazing people. I'm so happy for them. They're such a cute couple. They've been together for years, and they are actually our children's godparents, and they got engaged. So when I found that out, I was pretty much crying in a heap on the floor. So Emma, if you're watching this, I'm so excited for you. Oh my god. So it's been a fab month overall. The leaves are starting to change. I'm ready for spooky and cozy season, you guys. I'm so ready. So without further ado, let's jump into all of the books I read in September. As usual, we will start off with our Storygraph statistics. So in September, I read 6 books totaling 1,970 pages. Moods were dark, mysterious, tense, light-hearted, adventurous, funny, sad and emotional. As you can see from the graphic, it is all over the shop. Mainly adventurous and dark this month, which I think goes pretty well. Pace was 5 medium paced and 1 fast paced. 50-50 split of page numbers, so I read 3 books that were 300 to 499 pages and 3 books that were less than 300 pages. I read 1 non-fiction and 5 fiction this month. Genres were fantasy, horror, middle grade, LGBTQIA+, young adult, true crime, thriller, romance and a memoir. All physical books, and my average rating was 4 stars. Pretty dang good if you ask me, 4 stars. So let's jump right in. I think I just heard someone outside, so I need to check it's not the postman. I don't know if you guys find this. If you have a house with a driveway, why are people just suddenly attracted to drive and park in front of your driveway when you clearly have a car park there? It's so confusing. So like I was saying before I was really interrupted by a passing car, let's go through all of the books I read in September. So this first book was the only non-fiction I read this month. This is a reread, but I am counting it as a brand new read because it was years ago when I first read this, and it is The Phantom Prince by Elizabeth Kendall. So Elizabeth Kendall was actually the long-term girlfriend of Ted Bundy, and this book is written from her point of view of how she did eventually have suspicions of him, and she didn't hand him over, but she reported her suspicions to the police, and having conversations with police officers and things like that, and going through her thoughts and feelings of what happened once he was arrested, when he got sentenced. And this was a very hard read, but I feel like it is important to hear the stories of other people as well, especially people who are involved closely with serial killers, If you do not know who Ted Bundy is, he was a serial killer who killed over 30 women and girls across the United States. And Elizabeth had no clue for most of their relationship. She started to get some suspicions later on in their relationship, and she then went to the police with her concerns and suspicions, and they did brush her off a few times. But then eventually Ted Bundy was captured by the police. He escaped a couple of times, but he was then convicted and sentenced to death, and he was executed in 1989. So I do have a very, very big interest in true crime, and this was a great read to hear it from someone else's perspective. I have also read The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, but I do prefer this one. I rated this 4 stars. I don't really like putting ratings on non-fiction because it is someone's story. It's not just a story they've made up in their head. This is their actual life experience. I think I rated The Stranger Beside Me 3.5 or a 3. The main reason is because at the time, Anne Rule, who wrote The Stranger Beside Me, she was just starting to become a famous crime writer. So I do feel like a lot of the details were amped up to sell more books, whereas this is a real life experience. And her true thoughts and feelings of how it was being with Ted, and her thoughts and feelings once he was convicted and then later on executed, because she then remarried. She already had a daughter from a previous marriage, and this is a reprinted version, and it also has an extra chapter from Molly's point of view, Molly Kendall, who is Elizabeth's daughter, and how it affected her, which I think is great that she is letting her voice be heard. But even if she didn't, I would have the utmost respect for both of them for telling their story. So if you want to read about true crime, then I would maybe consider reading this if you want to see someone else's point of view. Because he was one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. And I think it is really important for people to learn about this and how some people just aren't who you think they are. On a lighter note, that was a very dark read to start with, but it is quite short. So once I read that, I wanted to read something a bit longer, and I think I picked the perfect book because it was very light-hearted. It was the perfect transitional book from summer into autumn, and it's Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. As you've probably heard on my channel, I talk about Legends and Lattes a lot. It is one of my favourite books of all time, as I think it is with most people. There's just something about Legends and Lattes that just hits that cosy fantasy spot, and this was no different. I rated this 5 stars. So this is set 20 years before the events of Legends and Lattes, so we are following Viv, and it is when she has first joined her band of mercenaries, and she ends up injuring her leg in battle. She ends up getting stabbed in the leg. So the band of mercenaries that she's with, they pretty much just take her to a little seaside town called Merk, dump her there and go, we'll come and get you, or you can come and find us when you're completely healed. And they mean completely, like no limping, no nothing, because to be a mercenary you have to be on top form. So they pretty much just leave her there. But while she is healing, she ends up wandering into a bookshop, and she meets a ratkin called Fern, and she has a little pet Griffith called Pot Roast, which I think is just fantastic. I love it so much. If you look on the inside here, there is Viv with Fern and Pot Roast. I love Pot Roast. I think he's so cute. This was just phenomenal. And Viv tries to help Fern restore the bookshop that she inherited from her father. She tries to help her bring it back to its former glory days, and they come up with ideas on how to get more customers and how to sell more books, and it's just amazing. I absolutely loved this. Again, it was the perfect transitional book because you have all the coziness of Legends and Lattes, you have that cozy feeling, like snuggled up by a fire reading this, and then you have like the seaside town vibes, which gives me summer vibes, but it's rainy, it's dark, it's dreary. So I think it is that perfect mix. It's got the summer setting, but the autumn and fall cozy atmosphere. So I would definitely recommend reading this. Maybe not so much now, I would probably go back to Legends and Lattes. But if you just want cozy, read this, because yeah, it was just phenomenal. If you want something that will transition you from summer to autumn, then read this. If you want just autumn, Legends and Lattes for definite. Next, I kind of stuck with the shorter books for the majority of this month. I think The Phantom Prince is less than 300 pages. Let me just see. Yeah, so this is like just over 200 pages. Bookshops and Bone Dust is a little bit longer, and then this book, which is Coraline by Neil Gaiman, that is only 192 pages. So I've had 2 books so far that were under 200 pages, or around 200 pages. This book was very, very odd. I rated this 3.5 stars. I don't know what it is. I just don't think Neil Gaiman is a writer for me particularly. I don't. I enjoy his stories and I enjoy his writing. I just don't think it's my favourite, which is fine because reading is subjective and everyone's got their own thoughts and opinions, which I think is fab. I just don't think I gel that much with Neil Gaiman's writing, but I did enjoy the storyline of this. It did give me massive autumnal vibes. So we follow Coraline, and she's recently moved into a new block of flats. She's on the ground floor with her mum and her dad, but her mum and dad don't really pay that much attention to her. They're constantly working all the time. They leave her alone a lot. They don't really interact with her. And she's got some very, very spooky neighbours. There is a man upstairs who claims he has a circus parade of rats and mice that he can talk to. And then her next door neighbours are just very, very freaky. 2 old ladies. I can't remember the name. I think it's Miss Spink and Miss Crucible. Let me see if I can find the picture quick, because there is a picture of them somewhere. Miss Forcible. So Miss Spink and Miss Forcible. So Coraline speaks to her neighbours. She's a bit freaked out. So she decides to explore around the house. And she finds a door that seemingly leads to another world. She's then plunged into this world with a talking cat who doesn't have a name and her other parents who have buttons for eyes, and they are trying to get her to permanently stay with them. It's just, and she then has to go on a little adventure to find other children that the other mother has taken. And the other mother is determined to keep Coraline and these other children for herself. So this was an extremely freaky read. I really enjoyed the storyline. It did keep me on the edge of my seat. But I don't know what it is. I think it's just Neil Gaiman's writing. I might try maybe like The Graveyard Book or something, just to see. Because once I've read 3 books, I will then know for certain if it's just the books or it is the writing. So we'll see. I might give Neil Gaiman one more try and see how we go. What I read next was even freakier than Coraline. It was my first delve into Stephen King, and I really, really liked it, but it was very, very difficult to read. And it's Carrie by Stephen King. So we follow Carrie White, and she is relentlessly bullied at high school. And I mean relentless, because her mother doesn't let her out much. Her mother is very pious and faith-driven. Because her mother was pious and wanted to stick by her godliness, Carrie was born out of wedlock, so she therefore sees her as a sin and work of the devil, basically. And her mum is just awful, and the people at school are awful, because Carrie is different. She doesn't know anything else. She hasn't been taught about becoming a woman or puberty or anything like that. She hasn't been taught any of it, and the book starts with Carrie getting her first menstrual cycle, and she doesn't know what to do. She thinks she's bleeding to death because she hasn't been taught anything, and that just is kind of like the tipping point for the rest of the story. But one of the perpetrators feels guilty, so she asks her boyfriend to then take Carrie to the senior prom. And if you have watched the movie from the 1970s, you will know exactly what happens. And then at the prom, an event happens which triggers the destruction of the entire town that they live in. And I'm not going to say any more than that. This was a very difficult read, but I did still really enjoy reading it. And what I liked is it's got snippets of like interviews and things like that from after the events of the book, which I think was really, really cool. It's like police officers trying to find out what happened and the court case and everything like that. I did really enjoy this, and it's very short as well. I think I got through this in a couple of days. I did have to take breaks at times because I did find it quite difficult, but I would still probably read some more Stephen King in the future. This was just a bit tough sometimes. I'm also really sorry if it's really dark in here. If I put my main light on in our bedroom, I just turn yellow. So I don't want to risk it. I can mess with the brightness when I edit the video. I can't really change the yellow lighting. So I'm sorry if the lighting is a bit dark. It's just very dark and dreary outside. But I think that adds to the cozy vibes, I think. So the second to last book I read was The Monarchs by Cass Morgan and Daniel Page. This is the sequel to The Ravens, and it is a direct continuation. So this takes place the semester after. This was so cozy, but it is very, very spooky. I think it's got that mix because it's like the back to school vibes. So we follow Vivi. Her name's Vivian, but she goes by Vivi in the books, and Scarlet. And I can't give too much away because it will then spoil the events of the first book. So Vivi, after finding out she is a witch and being accepted into the Raven sorority house, she is trying to harness her powers to impress Scarlet, who has just been made president of the Ravens. She's trying to prove herself to her sisters. They're not actual sisters, but you know what I mean, like sorority sisters. She's trying to prove herself. Both of them are, because Scarlet is trying to prove herself as a president, a new president, and Vivi, as a new member of the sorority, is trying to harness her powers so she can help and protect her sisters where she can. But there seems to be some unfinished business, and dark forces are afoot because they throw a party, which is normal in college. So they are responsible for throwing a party, and things just get completely out of hand. But it's a bit too out of hand for the sisters to have done anything, so they think that much darker forces are afield. So this book follows them trying to find those dark forces that seem to want this sorority gone and their powers to be gone. So this was really, really enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't quite 5 stars, but I did really, really enjoy it. It's just because the reason why I gave it 4 stars was because a lot of the details from the first book were mentioned, so it did feel like we were just like info filling. Oh, this is just a reminder of what happened in the first book, and I don't mind that a few times, but it was pretty much every chapter there was just a little snippet of something that happened in the first book, and it's like, I already know this because I've already read the first book. But other than that, I did really enjoy it, and I loved the storyline, and it is a little bit scary as well. There were moments where I was like, oh, I don't like how scary this is getting, but it was a really good read nonetheless. And then the last book I read, I finished this in September by the skin of my teeth. Today is the 1st of October. I finished this last night with 190 pages left, and it is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This has been on my TBR for a really long time, so I thought I'd better finally read it. I'm trying to get through all of my individual books on my autumn TBR first before I delve into series, and I do have some more to add to my TBR because I have a book haul coming, but yeah, I have a bit of a problem, but it's fine, it's fine. But after hundreds of years of feuds and massacres between the werewolves and the vampires, they decide to come to an agreement, and that agreement is a collateral and a marriage of convenience between Misery and Law, who is a werewolf. So Misery, as you can pretty much see from the cover, she's a vampire. So this is a pure marriage of convenience, enemies to lovers romance, and it is a paranormal romance. I did enjoy it. It was okay. I rated it 3.5 stars. This is the first book from Ali Hazelwood I have read. I'm just not a big romance romance reader really, because it is a mix of paranormal but it has also got that contemporary feel with it as well. And this is basically them exploring their relationship from enemies to lovers to then kind of acquaintances to lovers to then friends to lovers. She now finds herself at the altar as collateral to marry this werewolf who she has never met before. And she obviously moves into his house and then meets his little sister, who she then gets quite attached to. But her best friend, Misery's best friend, has also gone missing. So they have to work together to try and find out what happened to Serena, who is Misery's best friend. So there's a mix of different things. There's suspense, there's romance. There's quite a lot of... There is definitely the enemies to lovers trope in here as well, but there's a lot of banter as well, which I really liked. So the reason why I rated it 3.5 stars was because the spicy scenes did just seem a bit forced, and they just seemed like they were plopped in there, rather than there being lots and lots and lots of build-up. There is definite build-up in some places, like Misery's scent. Lo can't seem to control himself when he smells her. And you find out the reason why for that later on in the book. But they just seemed a bit forced, and I did find myself cringing a little bit. Just because I'm not a big romance reader. I'm more into like fantasy. I don't mind the occasional fantasy romance, but I don't think I've read enough. But this was my first paranormal contemporary romance, and I just wasn't a big fan. But if Ali Hazelwood writes another paranormal romance, I may give it a go, but I'm probably not going to read any more of her books, unfortunately. But this was okay. I enjoyed it. There was just some parts that I didn't really like, which is completely fine. So that was all the books that I read in September. It was a pretty good reading month if you ask me, and I hope October is even better. I'm currently filming a reading vlog as well, so that will be out very, very soon. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you want to see more from me, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye!